Good evening and welcome to the extraordinary meeting of Council. Today is Wednesday the 5th of March 2025. I'll start with an acknowledgement of country. Lithgow City Council acknowledges the Wiradjuri elders past and present of the Wiradjuri Nation, the original custodians of the land on which the Lithgow communities reside. The Council also extends our respects to our neighbouring nations. Declaration of webcasting. I inform all those in attendance at this meeting that the meeting is being webcast and that those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements concerning any person, councillor or employee, and refrain from discussing those matters subject to closed council proceedings as indicated in clause 14.1 of the Code of Meeting Practice. I note that 7 councillors, including myself, are present in the chamber. However, I understand that we have 2 councillors on webcasting at this stage. Just apparently 1. Okay. So I need a recommendation moved. Councillor Fredericks, you've got something to move in regards to that?
Yep, that in accordance with section 5.24 of the Code of Meeting, Council approved the request to attend the extraordinary meeting of Council 5th March 2025 by audio-visual link to Councillor Tysas due to working commitments and Councillor Statham due to family commitments.
Thank you. Councillor Fredericks, move that. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Ring. If there's no opposition, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Declaration of interest. Do we have any councillors? No? Nothing online either? Councillor Tysas, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. No, I don't actually right.
Thank you. Is Councillor Statham on board? No. Okay. We don't have any minutes for this meeting. Commemorations and announcements. On behalf of the Lithgow City Council, the Mayor expressed sincere sympathy and condolences to the families who have lost loved ones since the last council meeting. We're now at public forum. Is there anybody in the public gallery that wishes to speak on the item on the business paper? If you wish to come forward, you can do so now. No? Okay, we'll move on. We're on to item 1.1, which is notice of motion Main Street footpath, and this was reported by Councillor Darryl Goodwin, Councillor Eric Marnie, and Councillor Steve Ring.
Mayor, could I move that we go into committee of the whole to discuss this item before moving any recommendations?
Absolutely. So you're moving that way, Councillor Ring. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Goodwin. I'll put that to you. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. What that means is, councillors, that you can speak more than once on this item. The rules of a debate still applies, but you can speak more than once. Councillor Tysas, did you get that? Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to the debate. Would you like to start the debate, Councillor Ring?
If I may. For the benefit of residents, the borrowing of funds by councils is a normal business practice. This council has got a very limited amount of money that's been borrowed. It's been reduced in recent years. We do have good capacity to borrow funds. I have a couple of recommendations that I'll be putting up a little bit later so that we can contain and get a better understanding of where we're moving forward. So there's no need to see this as being a knee-jerk reaction. We've got a problem. We need to fix it. But moving forward, we have a lot of issues that need to be dealt with. In excess of $88 million worth of roadworks. The cost of doing the whole of Main Street footpath is around $8 to $14 million. We have water and waste and sewage infrastructure that needs to be built. Moving forward, we need to have a plan on how we do that, and that will, of course, include borrowing. We need to be strategic in how we borrow funds. Now, I think everyone understands the issues that initiated this meeting tonight. They're being dealt with administratively. They're being looked at. We're bringing in new procedures. There'll be some more recommendations tonight. I'm confident we won't be in this position again. I'm very confident. They're here tonight to determine if we will enter a loan to undertake asset renewal of the worst section of Main Street, the worst section of the footpath. The part where we have raised pavers, they're trip hazards. They're slippery when it's wet, the whole length of the road, we know that. But with the slippery pavers, we are dealing with that through the Infrastructure Committee, where we'll be looking at what surface treatments can be done in the interim to buy us time to prevent accidents. That's what this is about. It's about public safety. Are we allowed to borrow money to upgrade the footpaths? Yes, we are. Under Section 622 of the Act, the Council may borrow by way of overdraft or loan or by any other means approved by the Minister. Is it appropriate to borrow funds for asset renewals? Well, according to the Office of Local Government Guidelines for capital expenditure, it is. Capital expenditure is incurred when a council spends money to buy, construct, renovate, or acquire an asset. What we're talking about is upgrading an existing asset which has failed, and it's failed drastically. Any decision that we make in this chamber to borrow or expense funds, even if it's only $20,000, means that something else won't be undertaken. I think all councillors need to be aware. That's a process we have to do every time we make a decision. If we go down this path, then path B is lost or gets done down the track. But looking at our long-term financial plan, the only loan that's identified there that has yet to be applied for, and it's not until 28-29, is for $5 million for the Oakey Park waste transfer plant or pump, whatever, but major upgrade renewal. The total cost of that project when the long-term financial plan was done was $20 million. Of that $20 million, $13 million is earmarked to be received by grants. By the time we get to that, we could be looking at $30 million for that project. What about the plan to fund the backlog of roadworks? We've got an estimated $88 million plus in backlog work. That in the backlog of works to bring our roads up to a good standard. It's going to take time. There will be potential loans, but as I said, we need to talk about our loan borrowing moving forward on these projects at a very broad level so we can talk about the various infrastructure that needs to be upgraded, not just roads, water, sewerage, buildings. We need to have a plan moving forward. And it's not going to be simple. Our main income stream, that is our rates, is not CPI indexed. The amount that goes up each year is determined by the government, and I believe it's generally a little bit less than CPI. So that does put us in a position where we have to be very careful with the money that we have, how we spend. We need to find savings. So with the $88 million for our roads, this is going to impact on those other programs. But with that, the Walgan Road project, we know we need $88 million worth of works on our roads. But the road works moving forward over the next 5-7 years are going to be impacted significantly by the Walgan Road project. This is a project which has got a cost of around $300 million. At this point in time, we know that across New South Wales, because of extreme weather events and disasters, road contractors and good road contractors are in high demands, and it's difficult to get them. We've already experienced the impacts of supply chain issues, so we need to look at them moving forward. But back to the footpath, the current estimates to undertake, as I said previously, to the main street would be in the vicinity of 8 to 12, 14 million. Grants at both state and federal level are tightening up, but some may still be available. There's in fact a state program entitled Local Infrastructure Renewal Scheme, which can be accessed by councils where they've borrowed money for upgrades of assets. There's nothing currently available at the moment, but they will come up in the future. So we could go down the path of borrowing money now, and in 12 months we might get a grant that will pay off the major portion of it, depending on how it's worded by the government. But I think we're at a point where we need to do something. We gave a commitment to the community. We lost the money. And the buck stops, as far as I'm concerned, any decision on council, the buck stops with us as councillors. We have oversight of the general manager. We should be asking the questions and ensuring proper governance procedures are in place. He is responsible, the general manager is responsible for the implementation. We need to hold the general manager to account. That is our role. We have sufficient capacity at the moment, but we need to get back some community confidence in us. We gave a commitment. Let's finish off the worst section. Let's make the rest of the footpath safe, which will be a separate discussion down the track. And then we can work out how we move forward for all of our asset bases moving forward. This motion will be the trigger to get a loans policy or a strategic plan moving forward, which will be critical for our road works and other programs. That's all I've got to say at the moment.
Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Mayor Coleman. The main street's our economic hub of the town. We need to make sure that that it's safe for people to walk on. We need to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing for people to look at when they come into the street. We've got the responsibility for doing that, and it's got to be practical. I'm not going to compromise on any of the above just to get the job done. It needs to be done properly. It needs to look good. It's not going to be one of those quick fixes, because we won't visit this again for another 20 years if we do that. Any decision we make has to be done with that on board. I wouldn't support anything that's just going to be a quick fix. We still need to attract industry to help us to pay for this. And as far as it goes, when we lost this funding, the councillors did not know that funding was going to be lost until after the case. So I'm happy to discuss whatever means necessary to make it safe, pleasing, practical, and assist all our shopkeepers with what they need.
Councillors, any further debate? Councillor Tysus, are you?
Yes, I do. I've got a. I know
we're in committee at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, but I just asked Council Frederick to take a recommendation. That it's a proposal, because we're not going to recommend it yet because we're still in committee.
Yeah.
But it's a proposed motion. If you could just read that out.
Yeah.
I've got something to talk to.
Oh, okay. Go.
The recommendation that 1, Council notes the administration's report on the previous and current financial costings and suggested loan arrangements and repayments for undertaking the proposed upgrading of the footpath on the southern side of Main Street between Bridge and Esbank Streets. 2, Council seeks in writing the full public support from all of the major political parties and all of the various Calare electorate candidates towards the urgent reinstatement of the previously approved and then removed Commonwealth Labor Government's Building Better Regions Fund Infrastructure Project Stream, Round 5, BBRF, providing $1,938,911 to enable the urgent completion of the remaining unfunded top end section of the Main Street CBD Stage 2 footpath revitalisation program. And 3, Council requests that their administration bring back an updated report on this issue to the ordinary meeting of Lithgow City Council on Monday, 26 May 2025. If any of you want a copy of that so you can read it, I've got it here. Just let me know.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. We're still in committee of the whole, Councillor Tysus, so did you want to wait for the debate?
Well, I think while we're in committee of the whole, I mean, I can still talk to it anyway and then start the out once we get back. But the discussion is that I don't think we're in a position on that report to have a loan. I don't think there's anything we can move forward internally within the council, but there is a window of opportunity coming up in the next 8 weeks with the federal election. This is the time when commitments or promises are made by the candidates, the parties, and the government and the opposition. We're not looking for anything new. We're actually looking for the $2 million up to $2 million that was taken away anyway. If we can get that put back in, that then over the next 8 weeks to get a commitment, the new government comes in, and we may be able to do that quite quickly so that I'm not sure how long the extra work is going to take by the time the contract is issued. I'm assuming it's going to be another 2 or 3 months. And then we're asking for a report to come back at the May, which will give us about 6 weeks after the federal election to sort of have an idea of where we're at. Plus we're into getting to the budget sessions as well. So it's not putting off, but I think it's important to realise that we need that money back. I know we've made representations in the last part of last year and this year. I think the fact that we've had this opportunity of up to the federal election, it's a very close federal election. I don't see that it would take too much for a political party to suggest, yes, we will reinstate the $10 million tax. We'll be out of pocket a little bit, but we're just asking for the grant to come back. I know the cost may have increased, but that is something we'll have to do if the $1.9 million is put back in. So I think it's just a process over the next little while, whilst this is happening, to get the money back. We're just asking for what was removed. The state government actually kept their promise with the other part, which is why we're doing half of the job at the moment. And I think it's incumbent on the using this period of time with the federal election coming up in the next few weeks to sort of get a commitment to do put the grant back in, whether it's just a particular grant program or something similar. But we need to put that in as quickly as we can so that, as suggested in the report, the contractor may be in a position to continue on and finish that top end of Main Street.
Thank you. Can open up further debate. Any further debate? Councillor Fredericks, I'll come to you, and then Councillor Martin, if you're happy to do that.
I do have 5 questions that I was hoping the directors and the general manager
sure.
could answer, and I'll ask each question and then wait for an answer, so that way we don't get muddled up. All right, the first question is, can we comfortably pay the loan and the interest?
That's a good question. Who, general manager, would you direct that to? Yourself or? Yep.
Through you, Mayor. So in the report, there were 2 options modelled as far as a loan goes, one for 5 years, one for 10 years. Given that council must live within its means, any increase in expenditure, which would be in paying the principal and interest of the loan, will mean that we'll have to cut something somewhere else. And we haven't determined what that would be yet. We would have to do that as part of the council's budget preparations.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. Councillor Fredericks, your next question.
Okay, will this loan have any effect on getting any further grants to complete the Main Street works?
Mr. Gurney? Or Mr. Edgecombe?
Through you, Mayor Coleman, it'll affect our capacity to obtain a grant for that section, but it won't impact any potential for grants to be secured for any of the remaining unfinished sections.
Okay, so that means the money that we're applying for, if that doesn't cover that section, something else happens where it's going to cost us more money, that's going to have to come out of council coffers?
Do you? Who's going to answer that?
Through you, Mayor Coleman, yes, but there is a very healthy contingency built into the estimates that we've provided.
Okay.
Councillor Fredericks?
Sorry, I'll just add that usually if council starts work on a project, it's very difficult to get grant funding, or near impossible to obtain grant funding once you actually start a project.
Councillor Fredericks?
All right, well, you did kind of answer my third question, which is what kind of areas are we looking at having to withdraw funding from to be able to comfortably pay the loan and interest. So I'll go on to the 4th question, which is, will this have any impact on us getting grants for any other areas such as roads and the like?
Mr. Edgecombe?
Short answer, absolutely not.
Councillor Frederick, you had another one, didn't you?
Yes, the last one, and this has been brought up by a couple members of the public. Could this in any way, shape or form possibly cause any issues where an SRV will be requested again?
Oh, that's a good question. Mr. Gurney?
Through you, Mayor. There's no proposal at the moment for any SRV. It's only been or less than 2 years since we had a large SRV, so there's no proposal being considered by the administration or the council at the moment.
With all due respect, I wasn't asking if there was a proposal, I was asking if there is a risk that this could eventually lead to the possibility of having to propose an SRV.
Through you, Mayor. Not this single loan, no.
Councillor Marnie?
I've just got a question to start with Mayor Coleman, if I could. Through you to the General Manager, and my apologies, I haven't put this through to you before, and hopefully it's somewhere close to the top of your head. What's our annual operating budget?
Mr. Gurney?
Vanessa? Miss Browning?
Miss Browning?
I'm sorry I've asked everything
Put you
without
on notice, yeah,
so
I might have to take that on notice, but
yeah,
should only take me a couple of minutes.
Might
That's
come
okay.
back to you, Councillor Marnie,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Okay,
She
I
might look it up
appreciate
and come
that,
back.
and it's
Miss
not
Browning, we'll come back to you.
intentional. Yep.
Did you have further questions?
Yeah, I'll continue on with a bit of an assumption, and I may well be wrong. I remember during the SOV discussions we talked about our $13 million operating cost, and we looked across some of our neighbours' fence and saw $20 million in Muswellbrook, Midwest Regional Council, and so on. The amount we're looking at borrowing is a very significant amount of what I understand to be the operating cost. So I just wanted to get that fact right. I would say, having written grants for 30 years, where people get their income is relatively irrelevant, as long as they don't make themselves untenable financially. But it would be deemed to be a co-contribution to a larger Main Street revitalisation project, which may run over several years. So these things can be put into future grants, not as direct contributions for those, but certainly they can be monies that council has spent over the time. I just want to pick up on Councillor Frederick's last question, which is a good one. I think every council has got an abundant understanding that there is absolutely no appetite for another SRV. So that if this was to drive us looking at recovering this cost through a rate increase, so let's talk in plain English, there would be a significantly limited support for it. I want to just think about a couple of things, but I just want to pick up on another important point that Councillor Goodwin made. We've got to do it once and do it well if we're going to increase our life cycle. What we don't want is workarounds where we put something in place that should have a 20-year life cycle and ends up at a 7-year, and we end up back revisiting the same asset. Councillor Ring spoke to the fact that we're starting to turn the leaves on the overdue asset management planning documents, which, you know, I'm not firing bullets at people, but the homework was due in 2017. Now it's now 2025. Now what's happened in between there is we don't get the understanding of the cost risks that are gathering in the background. We're still waiting on asset management plans for our water, our sewer, our buildings, our parks infrastructure. I suspect there's going to be significant financial challenges in that. So we need to be conscious that if we do go down the road of borrowing this loan over the 10-year period, it will mean that around $250,000 of asset management work will not occur every year for 10 years in order to deliver this. I'm still open to it. I also think we need to put in place risk mitigation measures to ensure this doesn't happen again. And I'll bring a third point to the report. I'll just put it out there just so councillors are aware of what the intent is that a grant register be established and the progress of individual projects reported bi-monthly to the Infrastructure and Finance or other relevant committees. So what we're looking at there, if the ship is going down, we're seeing it. We're not seeing it once it's hit the bottom of the ocean. And so we need to have these safeguards. I appreciate that Councillor Rings also talked that we should have a loans policy so that we're clear on this is not a habit forming activity, because we're going to send the council bust if we start thinking that every time we've got a thought bubble we'll borrow some money. The essential things Councillor Ring spoke to, such as a wastewater transfer or water transfer across from Oakey Park into Wallerawang, things like that, they're essential pieces of infrastructure that we will need to borrow money on. So, and I also just want to also support the fact we made a commitment to our community that we were going to do something about Main Street. The community had an understanding that we were going to do the top end of Main Street. I tend to be someone who I'd like to, as best I can in life, stick to what I say I was going to do. And it's an unfortunate situation if we do end up borrowing money. But if we say something, we've got to turn up and do it.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Smith? Oh, hang on, General Manager, sorry.
Through you, Mayor, just to answer Councillor Marnie's question, I was just wanted to pull up the actuals that we spent last financial year. Operating was around about 67 million expenditure.
Yep, follow-up question, yeah.
Is that inclusive of grant funding?
Operating grant funding, yes.
Yeah. I want to go back to the core, because at the end of the day, when everyone walks away as partners, the core is what we're left with. And so my apologies, I'm not trying to be clever and bring a question in front of people when I've given you notice. I had a feeling it might be at the top of people's heads, but it's not. But
Ms Browning, I think, has a response to your previous question, Councillor Marnie.
Just to add, the original budget is a closer approximation of the expenditure prior to grants funding that occurred during the year.
Yep.
And for this year, it was $65 million for the operating expenditure and $30 million for capital, but the capital probably has a fairly significant portion of grants in there in relation to natural disaster. So $65 million is the average operating spend.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
In these, in the notes here, I noticed that the original figure, excuse me, for north and south was 2.9. The revised figure for south only was, excuse me, was 1.8 million. Now, are we looking now, if we get the south side done, have I got this correct or not, that this is double 1.8 and makes it 3.6 in total now if we do the south side, or is it going to go back to the 2.9?
Can someone answer those questions?
Through you, Mayor Coleman, the figures we've quoted have been given on the premise that we've not been able to reach out to the contractor and have them provide us with a formal quote. Without having that, we felt it was only prudent to assume a healthy contingency escalation and sort of other ancillary cost allowances, so that if we took out this loan, we weren't going to go back for seconds. So it's likely, highly likely, that we wouldn't use the full value of the amount that we took out for the loan, and what council would choose to do with that could be a decision of council once we finish the project.
Councillor Smith, does that suffice?
So what would be the figure that we'd be borrowing then?
Mr. Edgecombe?
As it states in the report,
2.07.
That's the one.
057.
Yes.
Councillor Smith?
Right, that answers that part. My my main criteria with this, I think, is safety. Now, this has been going on a fair while from what I've read. Stage 1 was done quite some years ago now. We're now moving into stage 2, which is the northern side of Bridge Street to S Bank, and which we're now debating the point of doing the southern side as well. So where does all those other areas lie in the future to come? Do they still stand stranded until such times that we get the money to do it? and still carry the safety problems that are inherent with it now?
That's a good question, Mr. Edgecombe.
Through you, Mayor Coleman. Not stranded, I wouldn't use that term. Councillor Ring, through his leadership at the Infrastructure Committee, has requested that we undertake an investigation and detailed costing of options to improve the slip resistance of the main street. That can be done in a variety of ways. There are sandblasting, acid etching, there's the application of other types of materials like bitumen or anything. There's several options we can pursue to improve the slip resistance of the pavers. There are many companies around Australia that provide those services, so we'll be reaching out to them to hear about those options and present council with an array of different opportunities to improve the slip resistance. But for the remainder of the length of Main Street, uneven pavers are not common. They occur, as they would with any footpath that's over 30 years old at this point, and the nature of the pavers that were chosen at that time. But we have the capacity to continue pulling those up with our own day labour and replacing them periodically until we find a grant. So the conversation has been that the southern side of the eastern section of Main Street is the worst. It is. And we do not have the capacity to keep maintaining those pavers because they are quite literally at the end of life. But we do have the capacity for the remainder of the length. Plus, we're confident in the stability of those pavers, so our street sweepers are actually able to service the full length of the remainder of the street.
Thank you.
So can I just ask this there? Then would we be better served by this grant in maybe doing all the rest of the pavers right to the end of Main Street and with this non-slip protection or some other sort of protection?
That's what I'm saying. So it's suggested that for the southeastern section side of Main Street, we remove the pavers altogether and replace them with a suitable alternative. For all other areas of Main Street, everything west of S-Bank Street, we consider other options that are far reduced in cost but would improve safety, like acid etching, sandblasting, some other type of slip resistance treatment.
Yeah, I took that on board, but what I'm saying is the costing of it would be better if this loan money we're using now be also used into that.
I don't think we're at a point where we can estimate those costs, but I wouldn't think they would be so substantial. I would be estimating around the $150,000 to $200,000 mark, which could generally, I would think, could be provided using council's own funds. This loan should be a last resort.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yeah, Councillor Ring, then Councillor Goodwin, and my understanding is that Councillor Statham's now online. Yep. Okay, great. Councillor Ring?
In the recommendation I'll be moving on to be asking that we borrow 2.1 million just to round it up. Now, I have spoken to Mr. Edgecombe today. I was concerned about the contingencies costs. They are quite high. They may actually come down by 200,000 or 300,000. The project management cost no one's to date raised, and I'm going to raise it. It's quite a lot of money for 9 months' work because it's done by contract. But Mr. Edgecombe has assured me that we're going through a recruitment process at the moment for 2 project engineers. If one or more of those engineers are employed, the project management would be run in-house, which would then release that money. So then we have the option of any savings on this loan to use those to apply to the treatment of the rest of Main Street. So yeah, there isn't, Councillor Marnie is right. It means that there are projects that won't be done over the next 10 years. We'll have to prioritise. We've got to do that anyway. Everything goes up in price. We have to make hard decisions. But with any savings on this loan, we could get this street safe. And I think that is the way, that would be the most sensible way to go. It's not going to work on the southern side that we're talking about because you've got a lot of raised pavers. There's already a lot of trip hazards there. It needs to be done properly. But with the savings from this, and there will be savings, that can be applied to fixing up all of Main Street. Making Main Street safe then buys us time to seek grants moving into the future. That's about making it safe. And the pavers will still look good once they've been acid etched or whatever. And it avoids doing that cheap, nasty fix. It's about making it safe. So I think the options are there to cover what Councillor Smith was talking about.
Councillor Goodwin?
Through you, Mayor, can I ask the directors about the maintenance schedule and the cleaning of Main Street, please?
Sure.
And is that being done to schedule?
So, is that you?
So the full length of Main Street is cleaned 4 days 1 week and 3 days the next. As the pavers on the, not good with cardinal directions when I'm thinking of it on a desk, but there's southeastern side of Main Street. As I mentioned before, it doesn't hold the weight of the street sweeper. So it's still clean, but it's cleaned on a reduced schedule, which is once per fortnight or as required, and it's done by hand. So there's a pressure cleaner on the truck that tows around the street sweeper. The pressure cleaner's used, stiff brooms are used, and any other types of hand mechanical treatment as required. So yes, they are cleaned nearly every single day.
Any further, Councillor Goodwin?
Only that, again, I understand the safety side of things, and I want the safety side of things to happen, but it also has to be practical, and it has to be pleasing to the eye when people are in our main economic area of town. If we do something, we're not going to revisit it again for years and years and years. So we need to do it properly. We need to do it once.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Statham's online. We're in committee of the whole. Is she interested in speaking to this item before we go back out? No? Okay, got it. Yes, Councillor Tyson?
Yeah, to the senior management, and Vanessa as well. I just want to clearly report the council start saying recommending that we do not take a loan. Can I just get that early on the meeting record? Was that clearly the inference is that they are taking a $2.1 million loan and waiting for, and would be suggesting that they would be looking to still chase grants. I have a problem with the fact that we can't borrow 2.1 is an income in your government, and then once you borrow the money, you can't come back and get that grant. That's it, and that's going to be sitting there for 5 or 10 years depending what to do. There's over a 10-year period, I understand there's a $600,000 interest payment as well. But clearly, my message from the report is that the senior management do not wish to take a loan. They would prefer to have this funded by a grant application.
Mr. Gurney?
Through you, Mayor. To be clear, the administration is not making any recommendation with regard to borrowing. There are statements in there which are, including the statement that in principle it is not considered to be good practice to borrow funds for asset renewal. It's understood the council is looking at this as on its merits as a single case. And council has been quite restrained in its borrowing in recent years, and there's certainly no recommendation from the administration either way. It's a decision of council.
Councillor Tyson, you happy with that? Yep. Councillor Fredericks? I understand the administration's point on this, but this is your bread and butter. If you had to make that kind of decision, what would you advise? Mr. Gurney, do you want to address that?
Through you, Mayor. I feel that the administration has made sufficient comment in the second last paragraph of the report referring to council's borrowing capacity, and that should provide council with sufficient information to make an informed decision.
Any further? Do we have any further commentary in this forum? Councillor Evangelist, did you want to say anything? Or?
No, you're right. Okay. Councillor Ring, did you want to make another?
Yeah, just that the borrowing funds is a normal part of business. No council has sufficient resources to get major projects done without borrowing. Yes, you can apply for grants. Grants are drying up. That's reality. New government's coming in. Doesn't mean anything's going to change. It could be the same one. It could actually be worse. More grants could dry up. At the national conference, there'll be a big push to get 1% of gross taxation paid to councils, which would see our revenue base jump considerably. I think it's about running a business. We are here to make the decision. The staff have provided their advice. We are now to make the decision. That's it. It's very simple.
Thank you, Councillor Ring. Any further commentary before I get? Yeah, Councillor Fredericks.
Yeah, as you said, there's nothing set in stone, especially with changing governments all the time. Unless this loan is set to the interest rate being that and never changing, the next government could be worse. Hell, we could go into war in the next 2 years, which will see this loan completely unpayable, depending on what kind of war it is. We don't know what the future holds. And this is where I am very concerned about getting a loan is, look what we've just gone through. Look what we went through when COVID hit. What if something else happens that makes it completely unpayable and then council's in the red majorly to the point where we might not even exist anymore, or we have to keep hitting the residents with rate variations? Like, there's too many what ifs, maybes, and no clear, concise, we should do it or we shouldn't do it advice. And that's what's making me really question whether or not this is the right move. I mean, I'm the first to admit, I don't know crap about finances except what I have to do in my own life, and that's only a very small budget. We're talking about a massive budget that can make or break us here. And that's what my concern is. Do we jump full on into this? Or do we give the incoming governments a little bit of leeway to see if they will reinstate that grant? Because if we can get that grant, there's no interest. There's no money coming out of council. And the SRV did hit our ratepayers quite harshly. I don't want them to think that this is just us wasting that money that they all now have to pay. So it's, like I said, there's a lot to take on board here, and I personally don't think we can come up with a definite yes or no tonight. It's a very complex issue.
Thank you, Councillor Ring.
With respect, not being overly smart, but an asteroid could hit the Earth and we could all be dead tomorrow. We can't live our lives on the what-if scenarios. There could be a war, there could be a lightning strike and we're all dead tomorrow. We don't need to worry about those issues. We need to make decisions. That is why we're elected. That's why we take the role on. We are in a financially stable position. One of the recommendations I'll be putting up is to establish a loans policy, which will put very stringent controls on where we move. My understanding is, I've got what Bathurst has borrowed on their long-term financial plan, which is a lot of money, but then they borrowed money internally. And that's what's causing them problems, because they've got to pay back large amounts of money on a development. Councils should never develop property. It's too dangerous. We have a very conservative administration. Mr. Gurney did not believe we had capacity. He would not be sitting up there leaving it up to us. He would be making sure we all understood the high risk. There is no high risk. We've been up to 14 million, we're down to 10 million in terms of loans. We're in a good position to move forward. This removes a safety issue. I do agree with Councillor Goodwin. We want things that look good, we want them to last. That's why I'd like to see the top end done properly. And if we can remove the safety issues with the rest of Main Street at a reasonable price, then that buys us time to seek grants or other funding sources to bring it up to scratch. But we have to balance that out with $88 million outstanding for roads, water, sewerage, a lot of projects. We have to be smart in how we borrow money and use our resources.
Any further debate? Yeah, Councillor Evangelides.
I've seen the asset etching. It in no way looks terrible. I don't want to wait for a new government. We're one day away from a lawsuit. I had a neighbour fall over, black eye. We have to reach a decision tonight, and we have to get this fixed as soon as possible, because $2 million in a lawsuit is not a lot of money if someone's injured or or worse. So there'll be other times when we can apply for grants for other things. I mean, I just don't think we can wait on this another day.
Thank you, Councillor Evangelides. Can I please, Councillor Marnie? Or who else? Oh, Councillor Tysos, was it? Yep, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Good gentlemen, and financial officer. What is our current unrestricted fund? In other words, we're talking about $88 million, all that sort of money. My understanding is that is all restricted for programs. So what is our unrestricted current cash situation? I think you may have reported March meeting, I don't have that in front of you, but what is the unrestricted cash? In other words, the money available to pay people that we normally do, because it's not normally, from my recollection, much more than $1 million in it.
Miss Browning?
Through you, Mayor Coleman. The latest figures were up $2.1 million, which should be approximate in the February investment report.
Yes, so $1 million is unrestricted. All the other money we have in the bank, so it's all committed to other projects.
Can we just get that answer again? Because I didn't hear what you said, Miss Browning. What did you say? How much?
Yeah, so it's approximately $2.1 million, and that will be confirmed as part of the February investment report that will go to the March council meeting. In terms of the restrictions, there's internal restrictions and external restrictions that applies to, and obviously council has an ability to look at internal restricted reserves.
Okay, did you get that, Councillor Tysos?
Yes, so the unrestricted cash as in March is it 2.1 or is it less than that?
Miss Browning?
I don't have an exact figure. Obviously, that changes every day, but at the moment, yeah. But it's approximately $2.1 million was the last figure I was provided.
That's unrestricted cash, and we're looking at a possible loan of $2.1 million.
That's.
I just put that on the record.
Is that correct, Miss Browning? That's 2.1. Right. Okay. Any further debate or commentary, Councillor Evangelides?
Well, as I mean, we can't access that money to maybe at least reduce the loan amount.
Mr. Gurney?
Through you, Mayor. The unrestricted cash is really council's working capital. So it, as the director mentioned, it does fluctuate. So it goes up and down with accounts payable, invoices for large capital works projects, etc. So it isn't used. It wouldn't normally be used for another funding source. We do have internal restrictions. They're usually around about $10 to $11 million. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what the figure is at the end of February. But they're allocated by council to different projects.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that. I mean, if there was a way, half of it or even 500,000 of it, I mean, the interest saved by just reducing that initial loan amount is huge. I would suggest if there's any way, and I think Councillor Tysos will bring that up, if there was any way we could access some of that, that'd be great.
Mr. Gurney, my understanding is restricted means restricted. Is that right? Or
through you, Mayor, that includes internal reserves for items like plant and equipment replacement. So generally, they are for important purposes where we build up funds for years where we need to spend more. Some years we spend less. So that they are important to be maintained at a certain level. I would make a recommendation that council doesn't utilise internal reserves for this purpose, simply because it has been pretty tight with the internal reserves over recent years, and we've narrowed them down quite a bit to, or trimmed them back quite a lot to just what is needed in the next few years for covering things like purchasing equipment, upgrading buildings, renewing buildings, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Marnie, then Councillor Smith.
Just in regards to whether an incoming government would be open to providing another grant, we need to keep in mind there's at least 4 more segments of this project to be done. If an incoming candidate is open to that, there's no reason they can't fund the section between S-Bank and Cook and bring forward that funding and bring the whole thing forward. I have a very small household budget, which is at the centre of it is a significant loan, because there's times when even the smallest operation needs to borrow money for it to function as it needs to. So borrowing money in itself needs to be very judicious. Using unrestricted funds or restricted, and I take the cautionary note that the General Manager has applied against restricted assets. We've worked pretty hard as a council in the last term to move from having a mass deficit because of the grants that are in our budget to move to a surplus. It's important that we maintain financial discipline and don't start pulling the financial machine apart without carefully understanding the consequences of when we use other funds. So I'm just taking that on, noting also that we borrowed $4 million in the last term. Now, my understanding was that was to ensure that we didn't get in a situation that we couldn't pay contractors their money. So as people brought a service to us, completed a service, we needed to have a cash flow to match up against the way the money was being released in grants. So I'm not sure what, I fully understand the unrestricted funds. I don't want to deplete that. If that creates a problem, we can't even pay the contractor who's finishing the northern side because we haven't got funds available to pay them. So I'm putting a fair bit of trust in the financial team. They navigated us through some difficult pathways over the last few years, and I'd be loath to start pulling that apart. We just got to make a decision whether we're comfortable as councillors, and the decision's ours. We can't go looking to the General Manager to make our decisions for us. Otherwise, we'd be better off asking for an administrator and leaving the administrator to work with the General Manager. We're here to represent the community's views. The community have expressed pretty strongly to me that about a commitment of fixing Main Street, and we made a commitment back to them as a council that we would fix the top end of Main Street, and then we've stepped back from that. So I'll leave it at that. I'll just note that we did pay that $4 million back, as far as I understand. Okay, thank you.
Is that a question, Councillor Marnie?
I'll just so it's on the record. Thank you, Mayor.
Through you, Mayor, yes, the working capital loan was fully paid back. That was particularly required due to during the when council had to fund in advance natural disaster emergency works and had to wait for claims to be paid. That situation is now being corrected, where council has received advance payments.
Councillor Smith?
The only thing that I see a little bit problematic being a councillor here is the decision has been made by us to borrow a heap of money, which is fair enough. I suppose that's the position we put ourselves in. But probably to allay any worries that I might have, if this come under budget fairly well, this would then be taken off the loan, I hope. These variances and things could be taken off the loan and reduced as time goes on? Or would it all be used?
Can you, you right, Miss Browning?
Through you, Mayor Coleman, it's a fixed loan, so we wouldn't be able to reduce the loan costs themselves. So what we could do is, if there were savings, is divert those, as we've discussed, in terms of the alternative treatment. But in terms of the loan costs, because it would be fixed loan, we would incur break costs that would be similar to the loan costs. So there would be no savings in that respect.
Does that make sense, Councillor Smith?
One further question following on from that, if I may,
Yeah, sure,
Mayor.
Councillor.
If there are savings, even if we get significant savings and we do the additional treatment, we've got a couple 100,000, that money could then be put into our restricted funds, short-term deposits to actually get interest, which would help to reduce the interest on the loan. Would that be correct?
Miss Browning?
Through you, Mayor Coleman. That's correct. Obviously, what you get on investments is less than what you pay in loan costs, but yeah, it would certainly offset it.
Councillor Goodwin, did you have something?
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. I do feel sorry for the shopkeepers at the business centre town. I also feel ripped off by the government that they've done this to us. I'm happy to lobby government and wait 8 weeks to see what they come back with to us with. I think waiting or lobbying the government to see if they'll come to the party with any of this money, I think would be, I suppose, prudent. If they didn't, or if it didn't come to fruition straight away, I would then be absolutely happy to go for a loan if it wasn't, divvied out in a certain time after the election if they promised it. But I think for the space of 8 weeks or so, waiting for the election and lobbying the government to see what they'll come back to us with, I think that would be probably prudent. I may not get to vote on this, as I may have to go to work at 7 o'clock tonight. So,
Right, well, we better get cracking.
Yeah.
Councillor Ring?
Yes, like being a last comment. The reason I brought this forward was because we've got an existing contract there. The most cost-effective way of getting this work done is to extend the existing work. I'm happy for clarification on that from Mr. Edgecombe. If we went down the path of going, well, wait till the election's over, we could end up with a hung parliament, in which case it doesn't matter what the political parties do, they'll be dictated to by 16, 17 independents. But all of a sudden, the costs are going to go through the roof because there'll be new establishment costs. But I just asked Mr. Edgecombe if he'd briefly touch on that.
Mr. Edgecombe?
Councillor Ring is correct. As with any project, there are establishment and de-establishment costs. They'll essentially be sunk if the contractor leaves and has to come back. So there are efficiencies to be had by continuing the project now in terms of the continuation of things like traffic control and the like. But just for reference, if you look at the bill of quantities which has been included, the site establishment sits at about 40,000, disestablishment about 20. So we're not talking a small figure.
Thank you, Mr. Edgecombe. We really need to
Go into
to go back into normal council.
normal council, yes, sorry.
So seconder, please. Councillor Goodwin, I'll put that to you. All those in favour, all those against. We're back in council. Is there a motion?
Yep, I have a motion, if I may.
Yep.
That point 2 is modified to read that council authorises the general manager to negotiate a price for the additional work and seek a loan not exceeding $2.1 million. An additional point, point 3, that the finance and infrastructure committees develop a borrowing strategy for capital works for inclusion in council's long-term financial plan.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yep.
Councillor Marnie?
I'd just like to add a point 4 to it if I could.
Yeah.
In order to ensure that these things don't happen again in the future, we need to have practices that I think that's probably Councillor Stafen trying to come in, that a grant.
Hang on. Councillor Statham, we're just in the middle of a debate. So, Councillor Marnie, continue.
Point 4, that a grant register be established and the project of individual projects be reported bi-monthly to the infrastructure and finance and or other relevant committees. Part of the issue for this is we describe a government taking money back. It actually gave money to be spent within a time frame we didn't. in order to ensure that when we do get conditions put on grants, that we're able to have visibility. There was some amount of criticism of sitting councillors who were on committees who depended on the annual report that they received that didn't indicate a problem. So this is an
Councillor
issue.
Marnie, you've seconded that, so I need to come
Oh,
back
okay.
to Councillor
Sorry,
Ring.
my
Yeah, so
apologies,
back
yeah.
to the rules of debate. So Councillor Ring?
I'm more than happy to accept that.
Yep, okay, so you're all right with that?
I'm right with that.
And so are you speaking to it now
But, yeah,
as the mover?
I think if I can, we've basically said everything that needs to be said. We're elected to make decisions. We're elected to oversight the implementation of the strategies that we decide on. We employ the general manager. He's the only person we employ. He's the only person we manage. He's employed to implement what we decide and what strategies we endorse. We need to do this now. Waiting for a new government is high risk as far as I'm concerned. We don't know what's going to happen politically. You can't rely on polls. They're all over the place. And in terms of the costs for re-establishing this, we're going to need to end up borrowing more than $2.1 million. I think we need to bite the bullet now. If there is surplus money in this, we can put it to good use and we can invest it. I think we need to commit. We need to finalise the commitments we give to the community in order to win back their trust. We can't say we're going to do something and just walk away from it, regardless of the reason. We have to find solutions.
Thank you. Councillor Marnie, you've seconded?
I'll only talk briefly because
You've got... Yep, absolutely. Councillor Tyson, I'll be coming to you very shortly.
I won't reiterate what I said before, so I'll leave that. But I stand by what I said earlier on. We make commitments to do these two sides of Main Street. We do have a significant safety issue. I don't have the injury statistics. I've heard anecdotal injuries and quite serious injuries on this segment of the path. And as a risk management, apart from anything else, but I concur with what Councillor Goodwin said, is let's do jobs once, do them well, and move on to repairing the next asset rather than patch up and workarounds.
Thank you. Councillor Tyson, I'll come to you with your amendment, if you could, please.
Yeah, thank you. As I foreshadowed in the committee as a whole, those three dot points, I think as you had to put up on the screen, the main one is what potentially is the debate, but if you put off the May meeting for an update after the elections, and we seek all sorts of assurances from those periodically federal elections. We're using the opportunity of this federal election to see if we can get a grant for taxi or a $2 million undertaking to different private grant program. For the sake of that, I'm absolutely terrified that we go take a lay out on this, and then they come out and I'll say right, if we show that we want to do it. The other reality is, I appreciate that footpath's been like that for a long, long time. It just didn't happen overnight. It's been there since that whole idea to get it done. We've done nothing. A couple of councils have not done anything. That's the reality. We just need to hold our ground and see what we can get out of this federal election. Because we're not going to get much else out of the federal election. But this is just something that both sides of politics, both parties, federal and governments, independents included, can give us some assurance that we can get this back straight away. I'm not too worried about the decommission and commissioning cost of a new contract, but this has been like that for a long, long time. How can it be? It's not there are a lot of things in this local government area that need doing. A lot of them would, well, I'm making a line. The reality is, it's just not going to happen. We need to put this off until the May meeting and see where we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fredericks, I'm assuming that you're seconding this. Okay, so if you'd like to speak. Look, what's that? Sorry. Thank you. That was a bit...
I don't know if it's the way I've been raised, but I've always been raised with the whole you don't get a loan unless there's absolutely no other choice. I personally believe that we do need to exhaust every other avenue before committing to something that is going to cost. That's all I've got to say to that.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. You've spoken already. You have right to reply, Councillor Ring.
No, I'm speaking to the amendment.
All right, yes. I'll
I'm
come
not-
back to, yeah, I'm sorry. I
We're
apologise.
on the amendment.
Yeah, on the amendment?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm not going to support the amendment. The fact that the footpath's been widened for a number of councils is relevant. I was on the 2016 council and it was discussed. We're looking for grants. Took a while to get it. We got the idea. It is not safe. The top end is not safe. Bottom line, it needs to be done. We can sit here and talk. It's just as good as throwing it. We might as well just be a committee. You know, committees don't really achieve much apparently. But look, at the end of the day, we need to make a decision. That's why we put our hands up. I want this fixed and I want us to move forward and I want us to show the community true leadership, that we can make a decision. It's informed. There's very little risk to the community. Hanging on for what could be a hung parliament is a disaster. I think we just have to bite the bullet, so I won't be supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment by any of the other councillors? Yes, Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, I'm now happy with the information that Jonathan, Director Edgecombe's supplied, so I won't be supporting the amendment either.
Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? Sorry, Councillor Statham, your opinion on the amendment?
I certainly won't be supporting that amendment.
Okay. If there's no further debate on the amendment, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Councillor Fredericks, Councillor Tysus. All those against? Consider that lost. We go back to the original motion. So, Councillor, any further councillors would like to debate on the motion? No? Councillor Evangelidis?
As far as, I mean, we missed the rules for the grant. Does management know, do they ever give grants back when you've kind of missed them? I mean, is there any precedent?
Can you answer that, Mr. Edgecombe, please? Or would you like to take that on notice?
No, I can't state because we've never missed and had to hand back a grant before. It's the first time it's ever happened and it's the last time it's going to happen. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We're in the debate now, Councillor Statham. What would you like to say on the motion in front of you?
Just with the last comment from Councillor Tom Evangelistic, I think I said that wrong, sorry Tom. It's very clear to me when we went to Canberra, I actually lobbied Catherine King when I found out about that on the way to Canberra. I also lobbied Christina Bain. There is no way that money is going to be given back unless the miracle happens. We're also not just borrowing 2 point how many million, I can start the meeting, sorry. 2 point how much is it proposed?
2.1.
2.1, Councillor Statham.
So we're actually not just borrowing that, we're borrowing another $600,000. So we have to make sure that this has to be a number one priority as the council is to keep this people safe. I totally agree with that on every aspect of it. But what I don't agree with, I think we need to wait until a government is being elected, whichever side gets in, and then there will be opportunities to get more funding. I believe definitely from things I'm hearing that there will be opportunities. So I think at the moment we're not using our money, we're using other people's money. We're now putting in a farmland new rate. What those people don't get is that we're going to go to that rate. So I know I've got no connection with tonight, but it has. Because we wouldn't have to do that unless we thought that we needed to keep money to keep productive. So I cannot agree with, all that money we're borrowing.
So, thank you, Councillor Statham. So you're speaking against this motion then?
I am speaking against the motion.
Okay.
As much as I want to keep the safe, people safe, I really do want to keep that. But we also have to be in a safe place for us to borrow that money.
Okay, so you're speaking against this particular motion in front of you? Yes? Okay, thank you. If there's no further debate, I'll come back to right of reply, which is Councillor Ring.
Just a couple of comments made by Councillor Statham. There's no guarantees with election coming up in terms of what will or may not be available. We lost the grant. We didn't make the deadline. It's that simple. I don't want to harp on that. That's just reality. We need to get this fixed. It's dangerous. I don't understand the relevance about the farmland rates. It's got nothing to do with this. We need to borrow money all the time to function as a council and as a business. This is about honouring our commitment to the community. It's about removing a safety issue. It's critical. There will be opportunities for other grants, possibly. But as has been stated by a number of directors, grants are drying up. We need to take and make decisive action now. So I'd encourage councillors to support this.
Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, say aye. Against? The motion is carried.
Can I have a division, please?
Absolutely. I'll call a division. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Evangelidis, Councillor Ring, Councillor Smith, Councillor Marnie, Councillor Coleman, and Councillor... Right, I'm just checking. Those against? Councillor Fredericks, Councillor Tysus, and where's Councillor Statham stand? Okay, against. So the motion has been carried. Thank you. The next item on urgent is urgent. Thank you. Councillor Goodwin has to leave. 6, 7, 8. I've still got a quorum. That's all important. Do we have any items of business of great urgency? I have one, but I'm happy to wait if there's any others. No? All right, I've got one. It's been brought to my attention that there's a deadline for the Open Street Grant, which is a New South Wales grant, and we need to put in an application for it, but we need to make sure that this council supports the administration by doing it. So I'm going to propose the following motion, which is that council endorses the submission of an application for Open Street Grants, which is an independent application deadline of the 14th of March 2025. The grant would fund an activated event supporting the Lithgow Main Street Master Plan and a broader pace-making initiatives. Before we debate that, I actually need to state that I feel as though that it's urgent business because there's a timeline in regards to this because it's due next Friday and we don't have another council meeting until the 24th. But I also need to move a motion that states that you also agree with the fact that it's urgent business. So I'm moving that it's urgent business. I'll put that to you. Do you agree? Yep. All right. That's passed. All right. So what I'll do is the New South Wales government has opened the street grants. They're due next Friday. We need support from council to apply. I gave an undertaking that I would never do anything as mayor without the full support of the council. So that's why I'm bringing it to this council meeting because we have a timeline. That's the motion I've got in front of you, but I need a seconder. Councillor Marnie, you're happy to second? All right. Is there any debate on that? Councillor Marnie?
I've just got a question, but I'm assuming that this is always a consideration of the General Manager. Co-contributions, is there any? And no, there's not. Okay, so we're not... Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Grants are always made more successful through co-contribution. There is an allowance within the LEAP budget for a small co-contribution, and we would make that offer, but this would not be accepted before returning to the council for execution.
Thank you, Mr. Edgew.
Any further debate on this matter, Councillor Ring?
Yeah, look, there's a pattern emerging of everything's urgent. There's a deadline. We've got to get there. And sorry, but I'm tired of it. I'm really looking forward to the emerging economy committee meeting because it's clearly we're going off in tangents. This is LEAP. I don't know why this is being put up by LEAP. It should be putting up by Mr. Elwood's team and tourism. It's a tourism event. Thank you, Councillor Statham. So I'm looking forward to that because I really want to dive into the LEAP program because I'm tired of these late bids. It's either I'm getting the feeling that we've got staff looking, they're going, oh, look, there's a grant that's come up. What can we do? And I'm sure that may not be it, but that's how I'm feeling. And I'm over it. I've got to make decisions on behalf of the community. I take that very seriously. I'm very cautious of funding. But I want a clear plan moving forward on what grants we're applying for. Because the stock standard answer when we have a problem, we're going to go for a grant. Grants are drying up. They are drying up. That's a reality. We need to have a serious discussion in the Finance Committee, in the Emerging Economy Committee, infrastructure, about what our priorities are. Where are we going? I'm sorry, but we will revisit the LEAP strategy. I'm determined to revisit it because I think we've lost our way, and I think we need to hone in on critical tasks that need to be done to get this community moving forward. Sorry, I won't oppose it, but I will ask that it is brought to and tabled at the Events Working Party tomorrow for discussion.
Absolutely, it needs to be tabled tomorrow for that discussion to occur.
Can we have that added into the recommendation?
Yeah, point 2.
Oh, point 2, yeah, that it's, if you and Councillor Mann are happy, that
happy with that.
the proposal is referred to the Events Working Party.
Absolutely, and we can talk about that tomorrow if you're all happy with that.
Yep, I'm more than happy with that. Thank you, if you guys are.
Yep, you're happy with that, Councillor Money? Yep, absolutely. Any further debate? No, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Any opposition? No? Good. Any further urgent business, Councillor Money?
Just with your indulgence, Mayor, I was going to be a matter of urgent business, but it's been dealt with today. So there was some issues at the showground. I thank Mr. Edgecombe and his team for dealing with it so quickly. So thank you.
So a note of thanks, Mr. Edgecombe. That's noted in the report, in the minutes. Any further urgent business, Councillor Smith?
Everybody's probably noticed that the Waste for Energy has appeared its head again, and you talk about doing things at the last minute. Those submissions got to be in by the 8th of April.
That's correct. So I'm glad that you raised that.
And we do know that the council has opposed Waste for Energy. So I'd like to know how council's going to respond to this and whether a submission will be going in.
I've got both of them running at me. Which one wants to respond? I agree with you. The due date is the 8th of April. We do have an opposition to this issue, and the staff are actually all over it, but they can speak for themselves. Who's going to speak? Mr. Elwood or Mr. Elwood? Right.
Through yourself, Mayor. Yes, the Waste to Energy options paper has been received and circulated to councillors. The intention is for a business paper and to be brought to the March 24 meeting to provide the opportunity for the administration to be advised on how a submission or response to the options paper should be framed and provided at that time.
Thank you. And that will give the community an opportunity to come to public gallery and express clearly how they feel about it. So I'm encouraging all our residents to come forward on that meeting and tell us how they feel.
Could I just ask a question on that topic?
Sure.
I haven't read the document yet, but I assume it's not that dissimilar to the last time it was done. I imagine there's a few changes, but will this option paper provide us an opportunity to possibly modify our stance on energy from waste to allow non-incineration processes? Or would you prefer a separate nom on that?
You might need to bring a first. I'd bring a separate nom, but that's just my opinion, or you can adjust the motion on the night. I think it's a separate nomination because we're discussing the discussion paper, but you can modify the recommendation on the night, but I'll leave that up to you. Any further business of great urgency? No? Excellent. Meeting closed.